Previously on The Walking Dead.
We finally completed Season 4, marking the end of the standalone mainline titles. As per my promise in the outro of the final season, there's a couple of things I've yet to discuss. Firstly, Michonne, which I believe is a spin-off, so if I ever decide to make that one, it would be the last. There's also the Forgotten Mysteries list, which will integrate those across the entire series that were originally overlooked. The topic of this video, however, is of course 400 Days, a bonus episode and a DLC expansion of Season 1. First released in the summer of 2013, I believe it's one of the best DLCs ever made, introducing a new cast of iconic characters and a concept of telling short, interconnected stories from 0 to 400 days after the outbreak started. For the sake of inclusivity, I will stick to one mystery per story in preparation for the big one at the end.
It was an accident.
Hey, that's enough! I heard rumors about these places.
Vince's story takes place at the very beginning. There's a short prologue which shows him in the act of murdering someone, while escaping the scene down an alleyway. We're abruptly skipped ahead to a prison bus 2 days into the outbreak, regardless of how we dispose of the evidence. Now, this isn't the main topic of this mystery, but ironically, Vince and Lee were being transported to the same prison at the exact same time. I just wonder how much different Lee's story would have looked if the officer had just paid attention to the road. Would Clementine still be okay? Anyway, there's two very important characters in Vince's campaign. Justin, a fraudulent businessman who used a pyramid scheme to extort hundreds of millions of dollars, and Danny, who's a convicted sex offender. After a series of unfortunate events, we're eventually forced into a moral dilemma where we can choose to save either Justin or Danny at the expense of shooting the other's leg off. Depending on the choice, we escape with one of them and the other is presumed dead, with walkers closing in from all sides. The following mystery is simple. When we see Vince again 398 days later, Danny or Justin are suddenly nowhere to be seen. So what happened to them? To find out what exactly happened, we need to pay attention to Vince's dialogues at the campsite, where anything regarding his past can be used to determine a possible cause of death, a location or time frame when they disappeared. We'll start with Justin since he's the character I save 90% of the time just out of principle. Fortunately, it didn't take long to figure out how long their friendship lasted after this incident. Vince says this about a guy he was traveling with, who in this context is obviously meant to be Justin.
It was an accident.
Hey, that's enough! I heard rumors about these places. This guy I was traveling with ditched me trying to find one on his own.
Something of note is that this occurred before Vince found any other survivors. In contrast, if you save Danny, Russell remembers him. I'll talk more about him later, but it's clear that Justin split up with Vince soon after escaping the bus, and didn't bother to stick around for long. And because we never see Justin in Season 2 or any other Walking Dead media, it's safe to say that he's either dead or followed through on his plan to find a well-guarded and hidden community, something resembling Erickson's boarding school for example. In hindsight, his betrayal was very obvious because of his personality. Unlike Danny, he claimed to have lied in court to reduce his sentence, shows absolutely no remorse for his many victims, and consistently comes across as overtly slimy and self-centered.
You wanna know the funny thing? I don't regret any of it. I carried my victims for years. They knew what they were getting into.
Danny's case is much different. His fate is confirmed in the alternate dialogue of the finale if you save him instead of Justin. This time, Vince speaks very highly of him, addressing him by name, and is what ultimately causes him to stay behind with a newfound trust.
Cared when he let you run off alone.
That's enough, Becca. Guys, look. If I learned one thing from Danny, it's that we have to stick together and protect ourselves.
What? That guy was an asshole. You should be happy he got killed before Shell and Becca joined us.
Why?
Don't worry about it.
So, Russell states that Danny was killed before Shell and Becca joined us. Not that he died. An external force, either a walker or another person, was the culprit. It's pure speculation, but it's possible that a protective member of the group who's no longer seen, someone like Nate or a member of Mystery Number 4, found out about his crimes and killed him for it. The reason I say this is because of one sneaky line of dialogue by Vince after Bonnie asks him a question.
Thank you. Everyone out there is batshit crazy. We've all seen it.
Well, we turned out all right, didn't we?
Relatively speaking.
What does relatively speaking mean? Again, he's already spoken highly of Danny, so he's not talking about him. No living member of the campsite is evil or insane in any way, with the exception of Bonnie.
Keep moving.
so he's possibly alluding to past members of the group who are no longer with us. This could also just be him having some banter and it wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but it's a small theory that will become more convincing later in the video. In summary, Danny died sometime before he met Shell and Becca, but lived long enough to meet Russell. Since Russell's campaign ends on day 184 and Shell and Becca's end on day 259, he died sometime in between day 184 and day 259. He stuck by Vince for a very long time. There's actually a dumb bonus mystery here. Just so you know, I'll be talking about any small mysteries, if I find any, at the end of each story before continuing. That way I don't necessarily have to stick to one per character or whatever. I'm sure you all know what I'm about to say. Whoever you shoot on the bus, even though their leg is blown off, they are still alive as the screen pans to the sky. And before you say this isn't a mystery at all, we all said the same thing with Kenny and Clementine before they turned up fine. Plot armor aside, this is on par with those. In fact, with the massive amount of evidence that I'm about to share, I think this is a step down, to be honest. This final sequence does not change based on who you shoot, so I'll use the footage from Justin's scenario to illustrate this on both sides. Point number 1. The police officer's body is right beside him. Although Vince has the shotgun, anything else in his possession could have been taken to increase his chances of survival if needed. Point number 2. In the case of walkers breaking through the door, they would have gone for the officer first. Just to clarify, when I said that the Walking Dead zombies don't eat dead bodies, I was specifically referring to bodies during decomposition. Take Carver from season 2 for example. In most cases, like here, the body is fresh and would still be eaten by the walkers in the bus had they eventually pushed through. Point number 3, some people have mentioned that the walkers are closing in on them in this last shot, but they aren't. They're still bashing against the door, it just seems that way because of the camera. Feel free to frame check this and see it for yourself. Also, at no point in this scene can we see walkers outside of the bus, thus giving them an easy escape route. Point number 4, which is the most important one, this is day 2 of the outbreak. Every single car on this road still works, the nearest car being literally 5 meters away, and there's even people inside it for goodness sake. Yes, they also vanish in the next shot for some reason, but just go with it. And the 5th and final point is this. This isn't the only time we see the prison bus. It makes a short cameo at the start of Wyatt's chapter 39 Days into the Future. If there was an opportunity to show their dead body and close this case once and for all, this would be their chance to do it. Rather, the perspective, which deliberately obscures the floor, makes this mystery that much more ambiguous. Overall, I think this is more than enough evidence to prove that both Danny and Justin could, and probably are still alive if we shoot them instead. You can blame Telltale for giving me the ammunition to even make this segment a thing.
You know I can't do that. Things are good here. We just have to stick together and follow the rules. Just don't do anything stupid.
Conversely, we have the latest group of survivors and the longest story of the DLC. Shell and Becca are siblings who reside in a large group off the road where the prison bus incident occurred. They're first seen out the window in Vince's story on day 2. This is one of the many small details that I love. They interconnect the story beautifully and are easily missable. Did you know that the zombies in the courtyard are minor characters from the other episodes? The woman that Nate shoots and the prison guard specifically. The first break-in is a reference to Dee stealing the handbag. Members of this group act as the antagonists on the search for her in Bonnie's chapter. There's a lot to get into here. I want to make a breakdown of how the settlement was founded, because the timeline doesn't make any sense. How the group inevitably fell apart, as regardless of our choice to stay or escape, the sisters still show up in the epilogue. And lastly, what happened to the numerous survivors besides these two? I completely understand one character like Justin going missing because Vince was very transparent about his disappearance, and this was during the time where everyone was severely inexperienced and vulnerable. But here there's like 8 characters, including those from season 1, people who have seen and outlived the great Lee Everett, gone without a trace. This one I'm excited for, so let's start from the beginning. If like me you just assumed that Roman's group existed in some form since day 2, you'd be wrong. Shell and Becca's early cameo doesn't really mean much. When we drive past as Wyatt, there's no walls, and by the time Russell and Nate get here, it's the same thing minus the old couple. The earliest date we see Roman's group was with Bonnie. With this, we can confirm that they arrived in between 184 days and 220 days in. It also would have taken ages to fortify the walls among other things, so I'd lean closer towards the 190-day mark. This would explain how the old woman is still here and looks recently infected. When we interact with the bloodstains where the woman was killed, Shell says this.
Did you ever find out what happened there?
No. Roman said it was like this when he and Stephanie found the place. Could be anything these days, though. Still, better not to think about it.
At first it was only Roman and Stephanie, with the others joining soon after. It's unknown when the group fell apart, and I'm not going to bother pinpointing the exact date, it's not important. What we need to do is check their dialogues. Anything regarding the group, if their members are still looking for them, would be a great help. Starting with the leave ending, Becca is the one who speaks up, believing that it's safer to join a larger group for protection.
Maybe we should go too, sis. If Roman is still looking for us, he wouldn't be able to do anything to us there.
There's no way that guy is still looking for you. We've been to that truck stop. There's no one left.
A massive thank you to Wyatt for giving us another lead out of nowhere. We now know that the group doesn't exist anymore, at least they were all forced to leave their home at some point. You can argue that they started another manhunt for the sisters like they did with Dee, but why didn't they leave someone behind to guard it? Fortunately, all of this becomes clearer in a second. If we stay at the truck stop, this conversation looks a lot different, and sums up this entire mystery in a nutshell.
Staying in one place makes you an easy target. I don't care how safe you think it is.
That truck stop was a death trap. It was right off the highway, for God's sake. No way you and a bunch of sick old people were gonna defend it.
It got raided. It wasn't really a surprise. I think we all agree with Shell and Russell that setting up a camp here was very stupid. Truck stops / gas stations are some of the least hidden public places in the world. It was off of a major highway connected to a city where people were constantly fleeing from and into its suburban areas. Over time, I see groups of well-armed scavengers feasibly sneaking into the city from the same road, which is exactly what happened to Omid when he died at the beginning of Season 2. Yes, it's the exact same truck stop. It's hilarious that almost every character in the series comes across it because I hesitate to call this a coincidence. That's just how out in the open this place is. It was fun to learn more about the group's fragmentation, but in the end I'm amazed it lasted as long as it did. So what happened to everyone not named Shell or Becca? Let's go over every character one by one, to know if they died before the raid, during the raid, or if they made it out alive. Starting with Stephanie, she was a founding member of the truck stop group who taught Becca how to play the guitar. After the short time skip, she was captured by Roman attempting to steal supplies and escape. They lock her in the back of a van and ask us to execute her, facilitating the choice to have no part in it and leave forever. It's upsetting to say that her fate doesn't change at all. Even if we do leave, Roman still goes back to finish her off. It's not shown on screen, but both outcomes do result in her death as confirmed in the wiki and by the Telltale series statistics. Roman was last seen screaming at the sisters to come back as they fled the scene. Reminds me of Kenny escaping the motel in episode 3. But if they left Ben behind instead. This is a very interesting case because he's the only character of this group who we see in Season 2. It's extremely easy to miss, but when Nick and Pete take Clementine down to the lake, you'll notice a pile of dead bodies. Roman's body is this one in the middle.
This one's shot too.
Through the head?
Yeah.
The only explanation is that he joined another group after the truck stop fell apart. How he ended up here of all places, I'm not sure, but the most likely theory is that he heard stories about Wellington, similar to Kenny and Krista. To date, the cancer survivor group have no on-screen appearance or mention post 400 days. Their whereabouts are completely unknown, but I hope they died in the ambush. With the exception of Boyd, who's the only one who expresses guilt for essentially killing off Lee and his group. Lee's ghost is what got them. Yet it didn't matter if they escaped the raid or not. This group consisted mostly of elderly folk who would have never survived out in the streets for long. To end this mystery on a dark note, the final list of characters' fates are as follows, with Roman being the last one to die early in Season 2. None of them are alive today.
Should we just kill these folks and take all their stuff?
What happened to Nate after 400 days? Gotta be one of the most interesting 400 days characters in my opinion. He was funny and kinda cool, plus he didn't strike me as someone who would die very easily. Russell and Nate are two of my favourite characters in the series. Their dynamic and pragmatic relationship make this story one of acceptance, working together despite personal differences, and going to Russell's grandmother's to eat a home-cooked meal. It's a shame we couldn't see more of these two together because it's the closest thing after Lee and Kenny from a creative dynamic with conditional outcomes based on how much they like you. Like many characters on this list, his wiki article ends with the familiar "Nate's whereabouts after this remain unknown," so I suppose it's up to our speculation once again. I do consider Nate to be a level above the likes of Justin or the Cancer Survivor group. He's a lone survivor, an outlier in his intelligence, getting the better of Wyatt and Eddie at the beginning of the outbreak, and using Nate as a ploy to kill the old couple at the truck stop who had the upper hand on him. In my opinion, his quick temper puts him just below Molly as the second best strategist this early in the apocalypse. The community have come forth with many theories on how long he lived after 400 days, how he split up with Russell, and what could have inevitably killed him. Let's discuss some of these now. I'm not the only person who acknowledges that Nate is a lot smarter than he seems. Under a post about him replacing Troy as Carver's right-hand man, they think that Nate would have had an ulterior motive to build Carver's trust before eventually betraying him. He seems like he would use someone for his advantage, post as someone who's completely different from who he really is. I agree, which is why I strongly believe that Nate is still alive as far in as season 4, far surpassing the lifespan of the average Lost character from videos past. Other people claim that it could go either way. With luck and awareness on his side, he would have had to become even more cautious of pissing off the wrong person. Harassing random strangers like Russell would have cost him his life at some point. I think this theory is the most common one, although I must reiterate that Nate was manipulating Russell from the very beginning. Everything from luring out the walkers in the forest if you decline his offer the first time, from stopping at the gas station. I can prove this too. When Russell says, "I'm trying to get to my grand's house," Nate says, "Just get in, we'll get there, or somewhere, eventually." Demanding, deflecting, the somewhere in question was the truck stop. This interaction was 100% premeditated. He wouldn't orchestrate a plan like this on someone who he deemed dangerous or possibly armed. He would have simply adjusted his personality owing to these near-death experiences, which had nothing to do with the people he chose to trust, but rather the situations he put himself in, like parking his car out in the open in a hostile environment, or chasing down two armed men in Wyatt and Eddie to avenge his friend. Before I move on to the breakup mystery, did you know that his truck is exactly the same here as it is in Wyatt's story? After 143 days, you'd assume he'd fix it or steal another vehicle. I like to use this in his defense when people call him a madman or a thief. If he was a horrible person, he would have easily found a way to get another vehicle. That's just a fact. The only times we saw him act out in violence was against Wyatt and Eddie first. Their perspective is purposely delivered out of context. Listen to this conversation and tell me who's in the wrong here.
God, this is so fucked!
Why the hell did you shoot that guy, man? What the hell was that?
I didn't mean to do it. It just happened, okay? Where the fuck were you with a warning?
Me? You're putting that on me now? I didn't see the guy either. I was too worried those dudes were gonna pull guns on us.
Shit! Dude, how'd they catch up to us?
The second is obviously the old couple, which I've already gone into detail about. There's also a secret section. If you send Nate across the street first, you can point a gun at his back. About the most hostile thing you can do to another person. Nate forgives us and acts like nothing ever happened. What a kind-hearted person. Tell me if you like Nate as much as I do in the comments. The other mini mystery is how Russell split up with him. You may decide to cut ties with him at the end where he'll kill the two people anyway. If you stay silent or agree that they should die, because they should. They called Russell a slur and tried to kill us both. Past conflicts with Nate aside, I cannot let that slide. It would be different if they gave us a warning to leave in the parking lot, but they didn't, they just opened fire. Russell is still shocked about what happened, contemplating and holding his head. Nate turns around, gives him some kind words of encouragement, and the episode ends, off to Grandma's. The following events are convoluted. It's implied through Russell's reaction that he checked out of their friendship from that point forth. It's evident by his recollection of Nate at the campsite where he calls him batshit crazy in both outcomes. It's just the creepy phrase, "Nate kept you around," that makes it debatable. How long did he keep us around for? Not very long from what I can tell. Last time I checked, Russell's family does not make an appearance, nor is his grandmother mentioned again. Needless to say, he made it to her house and found something in her place. So where exactly was her house, and was Nate still around to get that home-cooked meal he so craved? Soon after the episode begins, you can interact with the first sign and he'll disclose that he has 63 miles left to walk. He also shows a map of his destination with 80 miles at the top. He walked the first 17 miles off screen. The town on the right is obscured completely, and the other is partially obscured besides the last few letters. We also don't know if he was travelling east or west, but figuring out where he started his journey would establish a direction. Luckily, Nate pries him for information and he gives it away immediately.
Arguing semantics, Russ. Give a pal the deets.
Alright. There was 7 of us. I didn't have any family there or nothing. They were all at my grand's down in Statesboro.
We can track down this place on Google Maps, following the highway west from Statesboro to a small town called Sandersvale, which matches perfectly, exactly 80 miles give or take, and the river west of Augusta is aligned as well. This took way longer to find than I thought it would. So Russell was travelling west from Statesboro to Sandersville, neither of which are locations we travel to in The Walking Dead. The closest would have actually been the train in Season 1 en route to Savannah. We have absolutely no way to tell how badly affected these areas were, but I don't think that Russell split up with Nate immediately. We have to remember that it was night time at the truck stop, and even a small town is extremely dangerous alone. Please tell me what you think below. Did Nate die somehow before day 400? Did he try anything with Russell's grandmum? Or was Russell just shaken up about what happened and went his separate ways? This mystery is by far the creepiest on this list. From what I've read, there's no record of anyone talking about the forgotten photographs anywhere. These are a number of portraits that coexist with the familiar faces of the 400 Days cast. Glimpses of these faces can be seen under certain conditions, but they have remained fastened to the notice board as untold stories from over a decade ago. The one and only document is a bleak wiki article with little information. It's here where we can look over the photographs clearly. I won't be going over every character because I'll be here for hours. Let's just glance over them and stop if we find something interesting. Some of these first photos look vaguely familiar but not at the same time. Maybe concept art of some sort. Survivor 1 looks a bit like Krista. 2 looks like Sarah from Season 2. It's not only the glasses either, it's weird. Like I'm pretty sure it's not her, but it could easily be her mother or something. Scrolling down to Survivor 8, this is the one who most people are familiar with. They're the only foreground character. When I first played 400 Days, I was clicking on it thinking it was a playable episode. The wiki also says that it's a girl, addressed as she, but I think that's a mistake. The TTG on his shirt is an Easter egg and nod to the developers. I was excited when I saw Survivors 10 through 13 because it reminded me of the family of Sam the dog. It was a long shot. When looking at them side by side, it's clearly a different family. Survivor 14 is very important as he's the only one with a name, likely a 4-letter name ending in Rad. It has to be Brad, I mean there's nothing else it could be, right? Searching his name leads nowhere as expected, but it was nice to find something I guess. Much of the same for the last 2. Survivor 17 is a baby, but she's probably closer to AJ's age nowadays. A theory I believed, and what most people would argue, is that these are photos left over from before the outbreak and have no relevance to the DLC. I disagree for 2 reasons. 1, they're called survivors in the wiki, not character X or person X. It's understood that these people have lived through the DLC to some extent and may have potentially occupied the pit stop before anyone else got there. I know that a fan-made wiki isn't the most credible source, but at least they agree that they were more than just pre-outbreak civilians. And 2, if the main characters of 400 Days believed them to be obsolete, they would have torn them down. They wouldn't confuse Tavia by leaving up old photos of random people who she could have easily mistaken for other survivors. I believe that these were all characters who were either around at some point, went missing or abandoned the group, or died and their photos were kept up as a memorial. My theory is that some of them were malicious. And when Vince says the line relatively speaking, he may have been talking about these people who are no longer associated with them. Survivors 3, 7 and 9 stick out to me the most, but I could be wrong. Honestly, the less I talk about these people the better. They're all scary in their own right. It was concept art or maybe part of a contest or something.
This is a good thing. I know it is.
In my second Walking Dead video, I concluded that all of the 400 Days cast likely survived the horde which infiltrated Carver's compound. With the exception of Tavia and Bonnie, they all made it out safely, albeit I didn't clarify one thing. Surely made it out in one piece, but for how long? I think it's fitting we saved this one for last because we're technically a few months in the future during season 2. It's the last time, assuming they all agreed to come with Tavia, that we can see them again following 400 Days. Who had what it took to survive the longest? Before I begin, there's a theoretical branch of this mystery. If the characters didn't go with Tavia and stayed at the camp instead, foraging for food like raccoons, would they have lasted longer or less? I'll do a quick overview of that one at the end. Just know that I'm exclusively talking about the path where everyone came to Carver's, everyone made it out and had to stick together like the old days. I'll do these in chronological order. Vince has proven himself to be one of the strongest survivors in the crew from the moment we saw him on screen. His story spans from day 2 where he was already in serious trouble, with no experience of the world around him and in a position where most people wouldn't handle. He adapted quick, escaped death and survived a lot of the 400 days by himself. He consistently shows good awareness and does not hesitate to defend his group. Being the unofficial leader of the campsite, when watching the scene back it's obvious that everyone thinks of him as the authority, by his actions and by the way he speaks.
Hey! Don't shoot!
Vince! Don't fucking move!
What I did was an accident.
Hey, that's enough!
But like all of the characters in the DLC besides Nate, I haven't seen quite enough of him to tell if he's really about that life. I'd still probably put him number 4, just ahead of Season 1 Kenny, but behind Lee, Nate and Molly for the Season 1/400 Days Survivor tier list. He was not dying anytime soon. The only way I see that happening is if he died in a shootout defending everyone else. Next we have an interesting one, Wyatt. I think the funnier question is, did he survive longer than his friend? That would be impressive. I don't think he did. He's terrible at shooting, he's quite tentative, hesitant. I don't see him surviving long when his glasses inevitably broke, so I think he was the first one to die. I don't know how bad his eyesight was, but he would have been compromised to some extent. The sisters had an advantage because they were a family and always stuck by each other's side. Becca could have died on day 2 if her older sister wasn't there to help. Currently I see this translating extremely well. Individually, yes, Becca was especially vulnerable, but they wouldn't split up for any reason, especially when dangerous. Also, Becca was already exhibiting signs that would have helped her in the long run, showing no mercy for her old friends when it came to making very difficult decisions.
Says we have to
Kill her? Yeah. Why would she do this to us?
She's just scared. She made a mistake.
That'll be her last mistake.
Becca, Stephanie is your friend.
Was my friend.
I don't want this to be who we are.
Just let me do it then.
I could see her becoming a cold-blooded villain given enough time. We don't see Shell do anything indicating that she's a competent survivor, but she does track down Dee in Bonnie's episode, so I suppose she's tactically proficient from a previous experience in the truck stop. Personally, I see them surviving ages together, but tell me if you agree or not. If one of them died, then it was over for the other. Lastly, we have the man himself. He's the hardest on this list because we know that he can survive on his own, but we have to remember that he was once part of a group. Other than that, before Nate picked him up, he walked 18 miles westward of Statesboro. I don't think that's much of an achievement. Teaming up with Nate to invade the truck stop was the coolest thing in the DLC, but Russell's reaction kind of ruined the whole thing. Becca wouldn't have done that shit. Hard to tell once again, but there's nothing to suggest that he didn't survive much longer. I'll only say that he definitely needed to change his attitude quick. If he was ever in a similar situation again, and Nate or Vince wasn't there, I fear for him. So that's the final verdict, with Vince, Shell and Becca at the top, Russell in the middle, and Wyatt as the least likely. As for the campsite scenario, I don't think that would have changed much. Still close to the highway where any psychopath could have taken the note and creeped up on them like Tavia did. I still think that was a dumb thing to do. My list would remain the same in both outcomes though. I want to thank everyone once again for watching this series, whether you were here from the beginning or just passing through. Michonne is the last looming subject of a future project I've yet to discuss. I'll make it sometime in the future, but 400 Days was the important one as far as I'm concerned.